this video, we're going to talk about Aegon V, the 15th Targaryen king to rule Westeros. He had a long line in succession before him, so the fact that he even came to the throne was pretty amazing. He's the fourth son of a fourth son. And if you want to learn more about that and the crazy happenstance that ended up happening in order to get him on the throne, you can watch our Maekar the First video. Also, if you want to hear about the tales of when Aegon V was a squire for Sir Duncan the Tall, you can watch our Duncan Egg videos. Aegon V came to the throne in 233 AC, after his father, Maekar I, died while putting down a rebellion in the Dornish marshes. Unfortunately, Aegon V had to start his reign on a very sour note for multiple reasons. Aegon V had meddled in the affair of a lot of people as a prince when he was a squire for Sir Duncan the Tall, and he really sought to reduce their rights. And these lords would end up challenging him greatly throughout his entire rule. Aegon V ended up spending a lot of his time squashing one rebellion or the other. Since he had spent so much time as a squire to a hedge knight and living among the peasants, he became very sympathetic towards them. This caused Aegon V to enact reforms that took lords' powers and gave rights and protections to common folks. The lords rebelling against these reforms ended up really wearing Aegon V down, and he began to wish that he had dragons so that he could remake the realm. As more lords resisted, he was forced to bow down to these lords, and more of his hopes for bringing a more peaceful realm where everyone was more equal, not exactly, just those hopes began to recede further and further and further as he was forced to bow down to lords to kind of keep the rebellions from going too crazy in the realms. But rebellious lords wasn't the only problem in Aegon V's realm. As well, his realm started in the middle of a winter that had already lasted 3 years. Starvation was a huge problem in the north, and Aegon V, ever being sympathetic towards his people, ended up sending a lot of grains and food to the north. So much that, again, the lords began to talk, and they started to question whether he was helping the north too much and sending too much food and grain. So then that started more issues. And then on top of that, he had the problem of Bloodraven, the hand to Maekar I and Aerys I. So in the Maekar the First video, we talk about how Brynden Rivers, or Bloodraven, had promised Aenys Blackfyre safe passage to King's Landing to talk about his potential succession to the throne. However, Bloodraven had tricked him and executed Aenys Blackfyre when he entered the city. Aegon V had no choice but to punish Bloodraven for the deceit, since the Iron Throne's word must mean something and not be seen as worthless. Bloodraven himself didn't deny what he did, and he even stood behind it, saying one less Blackfyre is better for the realm, and a lot of people actually agreed with him. So Aegon V ended up giving Bloodraven the option to take the Black, which he did. In late 233 AC, Bloodraven headed to the wall. With him, 200 men followed, a lot of them archers and his Bloodraven's personal guard, the Raven's Teeth, and even Aegon V's brother, Maester Aemon, who had refused the throne in order to keep with his Maester vows. This wasn't enough to pacify the Blackfyres, however, getting rid of Bloodraven and Aegon saying, yeah, okay, this was wrong what he did, he's being punished for it, our word meant something, we don't want to cause more conflict. Bloodraven doing that actually hardened the Blackfyres even more in their resolve to take back the throne. And in 3 years into Aegon V's reign, in 236 AC, and 6 years into the super hard winter that's hitting the realm, the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion began. King Daemon III Blackfyre, son of Aegon and grandson of Daemon I Blackfyre, who was the very first original Blackfyre to cause all these issues, crossed the narrow seas with Bittersteel and his Golden Company. They ended up landing in Massey's Hook, which is south of the Blackwater Bay, and they tried to rally more lords behind them, but they only managed to get a few banners. By now, the lords have realized that enough Blackfyre rebellions have been squashed, and they are getting punished severely for it, having titles taken away, having castles taken away, so only a few banners end up rallying behind this Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion. Aegon V and his 3 sons, Duncan, Jaehaerys, and Darrin, even ride out to meet them in battle. The final battle, the Battle of Wendwater Bridge, saw a massive defeat for the Blackfyres, and the King's Guard, Sir Duncan the Tall, who was the hedge knight that Aegon V ended up squaring for, ends up killing Daemon III, but Bittersteel manages to get away. So we are dealing with the Lord's Rebellion because he's trying to make all these reforms. They're dealing with this winter that is just crazy beating them. He ends up having to send away Bloodraven, who was actually a really good hand and did a lot for the realm. even though a lot of people feared him. And then Aegon V had to deal with 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, but the trouble was not done for Aegon V, and the next bout of trouble came from his sons. Like I said, Aegon V had 3 sons, Duncan, Jaehaerys, and Darrin, but he also had 2 daughters, Shira and Rhaella. Aegon V had gotten into his head that marrying siblings to each other to keep the Targaryen blood pure was a bad idea. And he saw the mixture of siblings, and he just felt like, no, that's a bad idea, we shouldn't be doing this anymore. And that led Aegon V to marry for love to Lady Betha Blackwood, a woman with dark eyes and hair, and the willful daughter of Lord of Raventree Hall. Aegon V was 20, and Lady Blackwood was 19 when they wed in 220 AC. And the fact that he was so far down in the succession, no one really questioned the marriage. They didn't yell at him. They didn't force him to marry his younger sister, which Aegon V was originally supposed to marry, and he was like, no, this is not going to happen. Because of his beliefs that more harm than good came from marrying siblings together, he arranged marriages for his sons and daughters, and 237 AC, when they were just children, to the greatest lords of Westeros, to help in the realm, supporting him and the changes he wished to make. He was really trying to quell down those rebellions. This ended up ending in disaster for Aegon V. His 3 boys were just as willful as his wife. Prince Duncan, the eldest and Prince of Dragonstone, was betrothed to the daughter of House Baratheon of Storm's End. However, Prince Duncan fell in love with a mysterious girl named Jenny of Oldstones at 239 AC. She was a wild woman who claimed to be descended from the kings of the First Men. Most villagers thought she was crazy, but Duncan ended up secretly marrying her, just being totally in love and infatuated with her. Aegon V did everything he could to have the marriage undone, but Prince Duncan refused to get rid of Jenny. This made the Lord of Storm's End, Lionel Baratheon, furious. Even when the small council, High Septon, and Grand Maester told Aegon V, look, Prince Duncan needs to choose between the throne or Jenny. He needs to give up the throne if he's not willing to give up her. And Prince Duncan was like, fine, I choose Jenny. I don't want this throne. And there was hope that maybe this would temper the rage of Lord Baratheon, and it did not whatsoever. Once his pride got wounded, he went crazy, and he was furious, and he rebelled. Sir Duncan the Tall of the Kingsguard ended up defeating Lord Lionel in combat, ending the rebellion. And this is a pretty big deal if you know the first Duncan Egg-Tale, because Lord Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, ended up supporting Sir Duncan when he was accused of a crime and had to do a trial of 7. They mostly did it to get back at Aegon Targaryen, which is a complete a-hole, but still, he ended up going against a man who aided him in his greatest time of need and ended up defeating him and ending the rebellion. Aegon V also offered his youngest daughter, Rhaella, to Lord Lionel's heir, and even made her stay at Storm's End to seal the bargain and be like, look, I'm sorry, but here is my daughter. She will marry your heir. Next, his second eldest son, Jaehaerys, who was now Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the 7 Kingdoms. Jaehaerys also secretly married against his father's wishes. Despite Aegon V's view on siblings marrying each other, Jaehaerys was more traditional, in the Targaryen sense of course, and he ended up falling in love with his sister Shira at a very young age. When Aegon V and Queen Betha discovered this, they tried to separate them the best they could, but this only inflamed their passions, and the whole, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And 240 AC, about a year after Prince Duncan had defied his father Aegon V, Jaehaerys secretly wed his sister Shira when he was 15 and she was about 14. They ended up consummating the marriage before Aegon V could stop them. But again, they were both betrothed to other lords, and this caused some problems. Prince Jaehaerys was betrothed to a Tully, the daughter of Lord Riverrun, and Shira to Luther Tyrell, the heir of Highgarden. So there were more fires once again to put out. Aegon V eventually became completely exasperated when he and Shira had 2 kids, Aerys and Rhaella, and Jaehaerys was convinced that the 2 would marry each other, which we know they eventually do. Finally, we have Aegon V's youngest boy, Prince Darrin. By this point, Darrin had 2 older brothers that had rebelled against their father, and he decided to be no different. He was engaged to Lady Redwine of the Arbor, but in 246 AC, at 18, he decided he wouldn't marry her. There was no other woman, and he simply just wanted to be a soldier, competing in tournaments and battles. He did prefer the company of Sir Jeremy Norridge, a handsome, charming knight, who the prince had squired with at Highgarden. However, Prince Darrin died in battle in 251 AC, leading an army against Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig. Jeremy died at his side. If all those issues weren't enough, there was one final issue of Aegon V's reign, and that was the Ninepenny Kings. In 258 AC, in Essos, 9 outlaws, exiles, pirates, and sellsword captains gathered in the disputed lands beneath the Tree of Crowns to form an alliance. The Band of 9 swore an oath to carve out kingdoms for each of the members. The last Blackfire was also with them, Maelys the Monstrous, who had the Golden Company with him. The Band of 9 promised him the 7 kingdoms. Preparations were made to handle the Ninepenny Kings if they made it to Westeros, but the king and advisor hoped the free cities of Essos would deal with the band. While they prepared for the potential battle with the Ninepenny Kings, Aegon V also had another preoccupation: dragons. Aegon V was obsessed with dragons, just like a lot of his predecessors after the dragons disappeared, and his brother Darrin's dream of dragons coming back really didn't help those obsessions. Aegon V truly believed dragons would help him make the realm better in his image and just quell all the rebelling lords and make things a lot easier. So in the last years of his reign, Aegon V searched for ancient lore about dragon breeding and commissioned journeys to places far off in the east to try to find this Valyrian lore. In 259 AC, the king ended up summoning many closest to him to Summerhall to celebrate the impending birth of his first great-grandchild, a boy named Rhaegar, to his grandson Aerys and granddaughter Rhaella, the children of Prince Jaehaerys. The witnesses there say that the tragedy at Summerhall ended up happening when Aegon was trying to hatch dragon eggs. A huge fire that ended up taking place, it consumed Summerhall, destroyed it. We know that he died, his son, Prince Duncan, died, his friend and the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Duncan the Tall, ended up dying, and a lot of people in the royal court. He ended up being succeeded by his second son, Jaehaerys II. So make sure you come back next Sunday. I'm not sure if I'm going to do Jaehaerys II or if I'm going to do a video on the Ninepenny Kings. I think it might be fun to do the Ninepenny Kings first, and then move on to Jaehaerys II. But also make sure you come back on Wednesday when we finish our Dunk and Egg story.